What a great way to start our Easter Sunday service here at Sutton Village Church. My name's Chris, and it's great to be with you this morning as we all experience this really bizarre lockdown thing together, but in totally different ways. I don't know if you're like me and there are certain things that you've always taken for granted, which just aren't happening in the same way at the moment. Just take, for example, coming to church. Something this time on a Sunday would have taken for granted. Look at it, it's empty. Nobody here at all. Things like going to the supermarket without it being a complete military operation. You know, you've got to psych yourself up to go to Morrison's. I've just taken that for granted in the past. Things like going for a walk around the park. You just take it for granted, don't you? Nowadays, you go for a walk to the park and you feel guilty. And then you have to do that really exaggerated swerve to get around people and make sure you're 2 meters apart. Earlier this week, my glasses, for example, proved to me how we can just take things for granted. The arm off the side of my glasses, something I've never thought about before, right? I suddenly had to start thinking about it because the arm fell off and my glasses fell off my face. I'd never taken any notice of the little arm on the side of my glasses. I'd always just taken it for granted. It had always just been there. And then it wasn't all of a sudden. And I noticed because my glasses were falling off my face. I also noticed because everybody I encountered for the following 24 hours just laughed at me in the face. All these kind of things that are essential to us in our everyday life that we've been taking for granted. And I really do feel at the end of all this, we'll really start to appreciate the simple things just a little bit more. And while I've been thinking this week about all these things that we take for granted in the build-up to Easter Sunday, I've been getting this nagging sort of phrase in my head. It's been coming back to me time and time again. And I don't think I've ever heard God's voice. I'm not one of those people that can claim. I know there are people that have heard God's voice really clearly. I can't claim to have heard that. But when I get something like this in my head that goes over and over again, I do wonder if it is God just planting a thought in my head. And the phrase that he's given me this week as we think about taking things for granted is this. You can take me for granted, but don't take me for granted. I guess what that's meaning to me is we can take God for granted if we choose. We know whatever happens, he will be there for us. And there may be some of us, and I guess all of us once in a while, do have that moment where God isn't front and centre in our lives. And we are just taking his grace for granted. Maybe this Easter, it's a time to reassess that, reassess our relationship with God. We're going to hear some words from Jeff Lucas in our sermon this morning very soon, encouraging us to get more actively involved as we've made this choice to follow God. We shouldn't just take him for granted. We can if we want, but we shouldn't. Let's experience and live out our God-filled lives to their absolute maximum. First, though, let's sing again together.